Everybody?
I like your mics.
Good morning, everyone. Today we're going to have a look at the 2024-2028 budget. So we set a couple, you can go next slide. Oh, sorry, I got that clicking now.
You might have just clicked something.
There we go. Sorry. So we set a couple of simple goals for this meeting. First, we just want to cover the changes since we last saw the 2024 numbers, and those were based off the prior year's assessment. And then we'll have a talk about the assessment shift. Next, we'll have a look at the effects of the business cases and the changes that were made through the single participant meetings. And then we'll have a look at any of the 2023 spending or surplus changes that we tend to do every year. So the first thing we'll talk about is assessments, and they're the total value of all the real estate in a particular area. We call this the tax base. In BC, it's separated into 9 separate classes of property, which we'll show here on the next slide. And during this surplus presentation a few months ago, we talked about some misconceptions in local government finance. So this has to be the number one, is that property taxes are actually calculated based on a government's needs. We set our budgets, and then those are distributed based on the relative values of taxation. It's not like PST or GST where they have a fixed rate, and as the underlying value of the goods increase, the local government will automatically collect more taxes. So that's not the case here. It's quite often the case where our tax rate will actually drop because we requisition a fixed dollar amount versus an actual fixed percentage. So the assessment classes in BC, here's all 9 of them, and they each get a different weighting. In municipalities, they can control their weightings, but regional districts have to use the provincial standards, and they're relatively stable. So the one example we cover here is in 2019-2020, for example, there was some legislative changes to how managed forests could operate. So BC Assessment decided that all those properties were worth less than the prior year. So what happened is all the values dropped year over year. And because of the weightings, managed forest lands have a 3% factor. So originally when the assessments dropped by $1 million, it was effectively losing $3 million of your tax base. So that's how that would work, and residential, of course, is just at the 1. But if you were to have a residential shop in your backyard and you converted that to like a business class, it would effectively get taxed as a $245,000 property. And so in the budget document, all the various tax weights for all the classes are listed out. So when we talk about assessment shift, it's 2 different factors. The first is the relative change in the overall assessment values between different regions in a service. And the second is the relative changes of assessment values between all the various classes. So it doesn't really matter if your assessments go up or down. It's relative to what all the other assessments did. So if one region's tax base grow at a faster rate than everyone else, taxes just shift to that area. If your residential assessments go at a faster rate than your other classes, taxes are all going to shift to the households. And if the value of your home increases at a faster rate than the other homes in your area, taxes would shift to your home away from others. So it's a zero-sum game. Whatever goes up in one area will go down in a next as far as the assessment shift goes. So regionally, the average this year is 3.1, which is a little lower than the prior years. If you look at just the electoral area services, that would be an average of 4.2%. So if your area is above the dotted line, taxes would shift towards you, and then if your area is below the dotted line, they would shift away.
So if I can, so this slide here shows the shift within the region. So just ourselves collectively, the munis and the electoral areas. So the average was 3.1. So within ourselves, we have 100% tax-based collection, and we have a percentage that everyone pays. And then the assessments come in, and that whole pie gets shifted up and down, to, fro, away from folks. So if so this is the internal shift within the SRD. So if you're above the 3.1 line, taxes as the SRD will have shifted more towards your area because your assessments have increased at a higher rate than other areas. I don't know, there's not rhyme or reason. Every year there's these dramatic changes in different areas, and you know, there's quote unquote winners and losers every year. I couldn't put any correlation to this one into previous years myself, but this is just, again, the shift. It looks kind of dramatic too, because if you look at Zabalis and Tassus, for example, and KCFN, wow, you look 33%. Well, I think there's only 100 homes or whatever in Zabalis. So it looks pretty dramatic that the tax is a shift there. I could run to the end of which I know the number in Zabalis, for example, is total for the year $5 a home. So it's dollar-wise, it's not that dramatic, but the tax shift looks dramatic. For A and B, it's more significant. There's obviously more homes, but in previous years, that shift has more been towards D and Campbell River and Quadra. So we have no control or authority over that. This is just what the net taxes, the assessment nets are, and this is how it plays out in this regional district.
Might just comment there that, for example, within Area A, the people that I have spoken to, assessments for their own individual properties have varied from 2% to 67%. So that makes a big difference about how much individual is going to pay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Dave's correct there too with the per year. If you looked at Zabalis last year was actually a decline, I believe, and it does get erratic. Area B is the other one just because there's BC assessment uses home sales. So if you only have one or two homes sell and those happen to sell at a high premium, you can get a higher valuation to all the other properties. So if you look in your binders, there's a 5-year trend chart for all the different various assessment classes, but it can get a bit erratic. And this is the same chart, but the green overlay is just for the residential portion. So this was going to show the tax shift. And so our document, of course, speaks a lot about the household changes without looking at a lot of the business changes. But you're going to see that. So for Area A is, for example, they're above the 3.1% regional average, but Area A is also unique in only 48% of their tax base is actually residential. They have a huge chunk of utilities and industry and everything else. So even though taxes are shifting to that area, it's actually quite muted when we look at the per household charts because, say, a lot of that shift goes into the other tax classes. Area B is the opposite of that, where they're almost 100% residential. So any bit of shift you see here is will get entirely reflected over into their homes. And for Area C, you're actually close to both the average regionally and within just the electoral areas, so you're not going to see much of an impact for the shift this year. And Area D is a big change from past years where taxes are shifting out regionally and then their home values are down a bit just because business and other classes has increased, so taxes are shifting away from homes.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but in Area D specifically, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, we had a massive shift towards residential homes. Like it was quite significant. I think at 1 year we had almost $100 a home shift towards that. So you were peaking, and now that shift is declined slightly, but at least it didn't go up because we had some dramatic shifts to residential in Area D in past years.
Well, what's interesting is that Area D assessments what's interesting is that in Area D, property assessments are actually down quite a bit this year. So we'll have to wait and see how that looks. I'm not sure what the percentage is, but it's rather significant.
0.3.
So, yeah, so what this is though is it's kind of this, it is this shift in all these classes. We focus on residential here because, that's what constituents are interested in. That makes up the bulk of, our tax base here. So we compare everything to residential. But so if you have an area where you have a lot of home sales and increased in the residential value, that's going to bloat your residential assessments, and then the shift will come to taxation in those. So that's really the impact in that shift. Like when we had a hot market after COVID in real estate, and Area D's went high, tons of home sales, residential home sales, tons of increase in assessments, and it just bloated the assessed value of all the residential homes, shifted it away from the other classes, and saw a big increase. You can see now that the assessments soften a little bit and sales soften, so then you don't have that big shift there. You're almost neutral on there.
Now, for Area D services, if the assessments on the properties go down, then their mill rate goes up.
Well, yes, no. Like we, like Mike says, we'll set an amount of money we need, and because assessments almost always go up, what's traditionally known as the mill rate, we'll lower that. If you look through your binders at all the services, I know me and Director Moeni have talked about this a lot. You'll almost always see a decline in the per thousand rate because assessments went up. If we didn't, we just collect a ton of money because assessments generally
No, I just saying it's the
go up.
opposite true in Area D, then their mill rate would go up.
Yeah. So, but we're pretty neutral there. But Area D's taken, you take a hit, but I guess to look at the positive side, it means the assessed values of all those homes are so much more. And so because of sales and increase in value in it, that, people's worth in their house is more, but they pay more tax. And then if it softens and the sales and the increase in the assessments does, it stays like neutral. It was again 2 or 3 years ago, where we brought forward what would be a $0 increase in taxes to Area D, and the shift was so great, it increased people's taxes by like $80 a home. So that was super dramatic in previous years, and this year more neutral.
Yeah, just a question, Mike. Just to be clear for folks that are watching online and might be new to this area, these percentages aren't the increases in the tax rate. It's just the relative assessment between the different areas. Is that right?
Exactly right. And that is the call I'll get is for Area B, for example, they will call and say, well, your taxes just inherently go up 13.4% over last year, so you don't need to change the tax collected, and it's just not the case. Like I say, we don't requisition the mill rate, we requisition a dollar amount and calculate the mill rate after, so that's exactly right. So when in all the budget binders, anytime you look at one of our tax shift numbers, it's the combination of the regional and the per class. So like say back in December, we brought forward numbers, and then here's the changes since then. So the second column, the green numbers, are the current change per home. The second, the column after that is the one you just saw on December 12th, and the numbers in bold there are the change. So we can just go briefly through those. So the first column I got there is shift for Area A, for example. The change, this is not the change year over year, but the change since you saw the number in December 12th. It's the shift is $1.16 of that, so that's the majority of it, and all the rest of it is kind of a sum. So every year we go into electoral area administration as soon as the January 15th deadline is over for all claims, so we usually correct that spending estimate. Tipping fees are quite erratic, so by the time we get to January, there's only a month left, so we shore up that, so you'll see slight changes there. And then there is a slight change to the support service charges, which affects everybody, but they're all relatively minor.
So if I can jump in just to give some perspective, if I can. So if we look at Area A, because it's a Area A and B are good examples. So we came in December 12th and we said, hey, that we're looking at, based on what your input, our input, we're looking at $43.89. Today it's $45.09, which is $1.20 change. And the shift in the assessment classes, the rates within them, has accounted for $1.16. So we almost nailed that one bang on, because the shift is out of our control, right? It's that shift amongst assessments within those 9 classes. And I won't steal Mike's thunder, but just because I want to make sure I get this point on Area B. So we came and said $48, and then we had input from the director on certain services, and we ended up at $86.67. So that's a change of $38.60 from what we said in December we anticipated. And $30 of that $38 is directly attributed to the shift in assessments to residential. So if we can do anything about that. So it just goes to show you, like I said, in Area D, we had a 0 1 year, and the shift caused an $80 a home. So that shift to residential assessments in B is $30 of nothing any of us can do about it. That's just what it is. And it can shift away too in years coming, but that's where you get that change. And you can see, for example, in Area C, the shift benefited them $4, and in Area D, the shift benefited in that area $30. So we went down. We said in Area D we had 201, and the shift helped it out by $30 in there. So take that out, we're basically bang on.
What does BCS stand for, sorry?
Oh, business cases?
Oh.
Sorry, this is a last-minute slide. I should have got that. Yeah. And the other one, just to point out for Area A, and all the totals were excluding the new Duncan Bay Fire Service, just because it's a small number of homes, and we do that as well for one of the services in Area D. So for Area B, as Dave mentioned, 77% of that was the shift, and then we had a bit of a business case. Area C, again, the shift wasn't a large part, but it did favor the homeowners. So the increases there were just for the feasibility for the curbside collection, some economic development, which we moved, and then the EA admin, of course, reduced that. For Area D, it was 2835, and then again, mostly due to the shift. And so the business cases added there, and then they also had a big drop just for the on the garden side. Click that. So this might be a little hard to see, but we can zoom in here. So these would be the total changes for the area, and of course, Area A, we break it down into the prior jurisdictions, just because there's quite a discrepancy between the two sub areas. And again, Duncan Bay is not included, but so the average change is 43.68 for Sayward and 733 for Cayucit. And again, Area A is less than 50% residential, so you don't see a huge impact with the shift. It's all relatively muted. The 3 biggest changes there were fire protections, library, and EA admin. And the decline in feasibility studies that you see that's just a return to the base budget. We had increased that in the prior year for the Walters Island water. Oh, yeah, zoom out. So for Area B, 86.67, and over a third of that is the assessment shift. And Area B is actually a good example of the effects of the shift. So in any of the shared service that are shared regionally, you're going to have taxes shift in, and then because it's primarily residential, but all the other classes exceeded the residential growth. So on individual services, you're going to see a small shift away. So you get that variance there. And again, for the Area B, Vancouver Island Library, EA admin, and parks were the biggest changes. And for Area C, again, it's $50 a home with library, EA admin, and parks were the biggest changes. And you can scroll down, and just when this presentation does go out, I have the corresponding pages in the budget docs. So it's changes there. Zoom out. And finally, for Area D, we have $173 a home. And again, their homes benefited from the shift, which is a change from the past couple of years. Fire protection, gardens, and transit are all the largest increases there. Feasibility studies is going down, but that's just a return to the base amount. In the prior year, we had increased the base amount to $75,000. And that's it as far as my presentation, but we can field any questions.
Thank you. Question, anybody? Well, I have one little question, or actually I have two little questions. One is on page 25, line item 451, just like home. It's 0 for all the electoral areas. But on page 26, line 451, there's a requisitions right across there. So I wondered what the discrepancy between those two charts were.
Yeah, and sorry, I should have clarified too. Well, at the board meeting, we're going to be covering a lot of the other services, but for the just like home, what you're looking at there on page 26 is the expenses. So we got a grant this year, which is going to fund some of the expenses. So there's going to be no amount requisitioned, but we do have a budget set out for when the service is approved, and it'll get funded by grant. And so that one chart on page 26 is. It'll show everything, but it's not going to correlate the expenses to how they're funded.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then one more question on page 27, general government services. I'm very envious about Area B. How come their amount is so low? What can I do to get that?
So that would just be on the participation rate. I think they're just above 3% for their sharing ratio. So if you were to flip to page 24, it will show you the various, so on that slide, this lists each individual services, and then that percentage number you see is how they share and everything. So if you were to look at the general admin, well, actually you're fairly low as well, so you're 3.6, and then Area B is 3.8. But yeah, it's just a combination of the sharing ratio. So the general government services, you probably just have more. So I could do a little summary for you on that.
We've tended to not, this is in the budget, so all the information is available. We've intended to not, in past years, included this slide at the board. If you draw your eyes to the first two numbers in there, and you look at member Campbell River, member municipalities and general admin, they're 97% on member municipality, and they're basically 70% on general admin. That has been, let's say, an unpopular discussion point in the past, and it's there for anybody who wants to know, and if they want. But like if you're envious of Area B's 3.8, I'm sure Campbell River will chime in there on their 70%. So.
Yeah, but I'll have to look it up again on that chart at 27 there. It's just how the different services are classified. So, but if you look at the total, you see between Area A and Area B, it looks like $200,000 in the total. So again, it's probably more of a classification thing.
But yeah, just for those of you, I mean, this is EA, but for those of you that don't know, so in member municipality administration budget they have in there, Campbell River pays for, including all the member municipalities, 97% of that. And then what we do collectively here in general admin and all regional services, Campbell River pays 70% of everything we do.
Okay. Director Vanesh, did you have a question?
Yeah, a couple things. One, on the first page of the Cortez section in the budget has sort of a description of the island. Just want to note that the numbers there, certainly with population, are different from what's said later in the report. It says that there's a population of 1,000. Later in the report, it says it's 1,100. I believe 1,100 is much closer to what's real. And I would love to just give some input on the description of Cortez there. Sort of describes a bunch of different communities, including Cortez Bay, which isn't really a community, it's just a road and a dock. So just love to give some input outside of this meeting, if that's possible.
It is. Thank you for that. And Director Mulroney also had some comments. So we're focused, we've put some shell wording in there for this document. So we've got two documents that we have evolved through in the budget throughout the years. One is the GL account, which is just a big dictionary that, is very complicated. And we've developed what we'll call a more user-friendly descriptive budget. This is that. And so you'll see we've got plenty of blanks in here. And as this is the draft that we're hoping to bring in February, if you have descriptions you'd like included, please send them in, either Mike or Renee or myself, and we will include the commentary. And we'll build on that year after year because you know these areas better than we do. So if you're going through and you see stuff, send it all in just by email and we will update it.
Great, thank you. My other question was around the Cortez grant and aid. In our previous meeting, I stated that I want to bring that $25,000 tax requisition to $30,000 this year. That's a service that hasn't increased in a long time, and just wanted to bring it up to more level. I think it's in line with the work that needs to be done.
Yeah, that's correct. So we could make the adjustment for the next one. But yeah, what we did is we increased the budget to 30,000, not the tax requisition. So we could do that, which will increase your budget by 4,000 or so.
Do you want the total to be 30,000 or the requisition to be 30?
The requisition.
Okay, so we'll increase that a bit. All right.
All right, thank you. Director Rice?
Thank you, Chair. I've got a lot of questions. I'm still trying to work the numbers. I'm quite concerned with the Campbell River Fire Service. And quite frankly, I don't see, I'm having a real hard time figuring out how you come up with the numbers. When I take a look at what is in the financial report, it says that last year we under budgeted. And you mentioned a figure of 9% higher. So basically, we were running a deficit for last year.
Yeah.
What is the deficit that we actually ran?
Yeah, we didn't under budget. So what happens is depending on the timing of the various municipalities, but so we're setting our budgets in January versus when Campbell River finalized their budget in March of last year. So we set our budget towards the preliminary numbers. Ultimately, so our budget was set down and complete by the time they passed theirs, at which time they increased their budget, probably that 9% number you had. So we did run a bit of a deficit in 2023. And then so in 2024, that deficit needs to be funded as well as any increase to their service.
So just some additional background on how some of these contract services work, right? So we have got a 10-year plan from Campbell River, and it outlines what they believe they're going to charge us every year. We'll put that in the budget. If we haven't got a finalized number or input from Campbell River, that's the number we'll go with. And if they change that, and we've, it's too late in our process to collect that money, then we'll run a deficit. And on the opposite, if that number is higher, then that'll create a surplus there. So we don't really have, we try our best to coordinate and get these numbers from them so that we're not running deficits because the next year, but we're dependent on getting this information from Canberra because we're a contract service to them.
Right.
So we have a formula for what percentage we pay on that. So they send us the bill, we pay that formula. Ideally, we know that number before we adopt the budget, and so that we hit that on the mark. Mm-hmm. But if they haven't adopted that.
Okay, because that was my next concern, is that what I'm seeing is the reporting just doesn't seem to be there in time to actually do something meaningful with our budget. So that's concerning. I mean, I spent a lot of time looking at financials over the last month since I've looked at this. And, taking a look at things like the SOFI report. We only get to take a look at the 2022 SOFI report. when you have a service where Area D is being charged 7%, the SOFA report for 2022 was that Campbell River Fire Department ran a salary of $3.4 million. With benefits, that's a huge number. We're not seeing the financial reporting for 2023. So again, I'm trying to figure out, if you take a look at our requisition for the fire, I mean, it's 695,000, just shy of 700. That is supposed to represent 7% of the total budget. So add another 93, that is a huge number. Where's the transparency in that number?
So our current contract is, which there is a motion to renegotiate that, but it's an all-in number, and we pay that percentage of it, everything from nuts to bolts in there. So we can attempt to rework that. In previous years, there has been an interest to look at alternatives to that contract service. We went out and looked at establishing our own service, and the cost of our own was significantly greater.
I've read all those reports.
Yeah, so right now, again, we have a contract service from them for to pay a certain percentage of their overall budget, including capital and everything, and that's what it looks like. We can and will explore looking at refining that. Maybe, I know the current fire chief is interested in a fixed number, and we would support that as well, because municipal and regional budget timelines don't align, and all municipalities adopt them on different timelines. So we're just not going to get away from the misalignment in terms of paying what the actual costs are. We could do something short term, but it doesn't help long term. So we have reserve funds that we put away, but we're putting away reserve funds for capital investment that the fire service says they're going to need. So we have a bunch of money there. We could take some of that money to soften this. However, that's just going to deplete capital money that we know we're going to need moving forward. So it's short-term gain for long-term pain, if you will. Okay. To correct the deficit, if you will, on the numbers that we're projecting and the numbers come in. We can do that a little, as long as you're aware of that's robbing from the capital we know in 2028, I think it is, that they're going to need for their investment.
Well, again, that leads me to the next question. I mean, here we are, we're paying 7% of an overall bill. In terms of the fire department, I mean, that approval is going to come from Campbell River taxpayers. We don't have any say in it, but we're being asked to pay 7%. If you take a look at this year's requisition, if I'm correct, the fire service, that one line item is $535 per household.
Yeah, I'm sure you're quoting that from the budget, and you're probably right. I'm not looking at it, but yeah. And
I mean, it's the challenge that I have is that again, this is a 28% increase. What's the forecast for next year and the year after? Right, we're already at close to 700,000. We're just 4,500 shy of that. So what's the number next year? I mean, again, I understand that, the Campbell River can run their fire department as they choose, but it is one of the biggest, most expensive fire departments on the island, plain and simple.
Yeah, I'm sure you know this, but it's challenging for us in that it's a contract service for us, right? So it's not within my control. So they give us a 10-year plan and says, this is what it's cost for 10 years. We go, okay, great. But those are just numbers they're trying to work towards. They're not hard and fast. And we found that they rarely represent what it actually does. So I don't have a solution other than getting a fixed contract that says this is a hard number where it's going to be, which we can do. I don't have any ability to tell you exactly what next year is going to be. I can tell you what they think it's going to be, but I can't tell you if that number is going to.
Well,
be exactly that.
I get all that, but I mean, at the end of the day, they still have to deliver a financially responsible service to us. And where was the notification that this was going to go up 28%? Where was the notification that animal control was going to go up 35%? I mean, based on that, that's a fairly scary trend. And what do the next couple of years hold for us? You know, what are the increases that are being contemplated for next year? I mean, right now, I mean, it looks rather challenging. And not only that, these are big numbers because they're not dispersed throughout the whole Area D. So, you know, we're being asked to, for example, the fire, that's going to affect about 1,300 households. And at 535 on just that one single item, that's a fairly expensive item.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree, and we're happy to explore options. The whole group is understanding how certain services work in terms of, whether they library or a contract service. Yeah, you're looking at $170 a home this year, and almost 100% of that is, I think the fire's 150, and the animal control's 12 or 15. So take those two out, and you've basically got a zero increase. Mm-hmm. So, and then we talk about the challenges because they're not within our control. We're contract services. We can, like animal control, we're working on resolution that you provided us to try and reduce those costs. And so this is part of the process of looking at this ball of wool and giving us some direction to try and unwind it or find alternatives. And it's a contract services, and we're not really in that much control of it,
And that's unfortunate because what I would really like to see before, the February meetings is I would love to see some one-on-one meetings so I can sit down and actually see the numbers. I mean, again, it's quite concerning when we're paying 7%. We have a requisition of almost 700 right now. That only represents 7% of their budget. So that budget needs to be in the millions. So how do you arrive at the number that you're charging Area D? When I take a look at the broad wording of the contract itself, it's fairly broad, and yet Campbell River Fire Department is a very diverse fire department. So what exactly is Area D paying for? How do they make those calculations? There's no transparency into this, and I think there needs to be.
Yeah, we aren't part of that, for sure. Like, they run their fire service how they run it. I think we've shown an example with our regional fire training and logistics person that there's far greater economies in doing that, and we have some say in that and help control the overall fire costs. But no, it's a service they run, and we pay for it on that percentage, which is based on assessments, and it follows the same model. But the big picture number, whatever it is, 10, 20 million, whatever that is, they don't ask us for our input. We can extract on the bill and say, okay, can we ask and see how this breaks down? But I don't want to set expectations that we have the ability to go, hey, can you cut that number down? Can you do this?
No, that's not what I'm asking. What I want to see is, if you derive at a number for requisition, then break it down for me. What were the wages?
Yeah, we can certainly do that.
What were the capital costs?
Mm-hmm. Just
those kinds of things.
Quick note
Let's see
there, too.
some actual numbers here so that, and then what is they must be doing some planning down the road. So what does next year hold for me? We got hit with a 28% increase this year. What's the increase next year? And if we're adopting 5-year plans, well, then what is the plan for the 5-year plan? Are we just going to take increases year by year from the city of Campbell River?
Yeah, just a quick note on that. So City of Campbell River does publish a 10-year financial plan. So the next year, the current estimate, but again, anything over 1 year is always subject to change because this is an annual process. So next year's 23% increase. It's an even bigger increase the year after that. But again, it's quite similar. So you could take, and this is the same true for all the different fire departments. And very similar to the library, for example. So if you look at the library's books 2 years ago, you don't see a 23% increase in taxes, right? That all just hit last year, and then they have a small increase published for next year, but there's no saying that they just don't increase that during their next budget cycle. So, and it's the same true for ours. So it's always subject to a fluctuation every year. But like I say, you could go to any of the shared services, library or Campbell River, and there's 10 years things. It is broken down. And you can't really look at the SOFI report too, because that's only staff over 75,000. Sometimes you have like when shift changes or anything else. But like I say, you can look at Campbell River's budget if you did want to see the 10-year forecast.
I did, and again, the only problem is it's when you're taking a look at those ledgers, what is fire?
Yeah.
Where is it? That's why I would really like to see, a one-on-one meeting where come back with those numbers so that we can actually see them. What were the wages? What is the budget that the fire department is running? I'm not questioning how the city of Campbell River runs their fire department. What I'm questioning is how are the calculations being made for what Area D needs to pay?
Yeah, that's just, they take their total budget and times it by 6.8%, because that's the relative assessment share between the two. And then the level of detail of their budget, that would be part of their policies or whatever else they would post. But it's very similar. I mean, we had a couple years ago, bigger increases to the water. And it was, same thing. This is the price you pay for the water, that went to court and everything else. But at the end of the day, they're free to set their budgets, and
Yep.
we're free to sign the agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Director Vinesh?
Thank you, Chair. Just in response to Director Rice, I just want to commiserate. I do understand the challenges in fire protective services increasing. Cortez had like almost a $245 increase last year. And I just wanted to maybe sort of reassure some of your folks that live in your area and yourself, the cost of running the Cortez Fire Department is very similar number to where you're at.
I've already crunched the numbers on yours.
So it's very similar. I think we're around 540 or something. And Quadra, when I looked into it last year, they're closer to 600. The increase is alarming. My people in Cortez have certainly felt that as well. But the total number that you're paying doesn't seem that far out of line as far as what other areas in the Strathcona Regional District are paying. But I do hear your concerns. It is challenging as we really try and deliver good services for the people that we're representing.
The only problem is
Can I just finish, please?
Yeah.
That we deliver good services for the people that we represent at a cost-effective manner. And I think that some of the questions you're asking are really valid, and increased transparency is a real opportunity and some negotiation there. So
We need to move along here, Director, if you're going to run out of time.
So thank you.
Okay, on receipt, did you have something? Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I have a couple of amendments to make to the Area C budget. In consideration of the upcoming significant cost of a replacement system for the Q Cove sewer, I think that it would benefit from a modest increase to continue moving the service toward its necessary goal of funding the replacement I don't even know what it's called. It's a whole wastewater treatment plant. Thank you. So I have a motion on that, and I have another motion following that.
Do these need to be motions, staff? Okay.
So the first motion is I'd like to move that the Q Cove sewer be increased by 2.5% and the increase be transferred or directed to the capital reserve fund.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Still have a motion on the table.
We're on receipt for a moment, and then we can do those.
Oh,
Let's call the question on receipt, though. All those in favor?
okay. Sorry.
Move receipt.
All in favor? Opposed? None. That's carried. And your motion again, Director Mooney?
Oh, okay. Say it all over again. Great. I'd like to move that the Q Cove sewer service be increased by 2.5% and the increase be directed to the capital reserve fund.
Yeah. I'll second that.
Discussion? Director Rice?
I just have one more item that I wanted to make a change on my,
Okay, after
Yep.
we get this done, we'll put you in there.
Oh,
right,
and the
moved and
increase
seconded.
be
Anything
directed to
further?
the capital reserve fund.
Okay, call the question, all in favor? None opposed, that's carried. And your second motion?
Thank you. Can I make them together? I have two, and they're about the Quadra Island Community Hall, Function 685. Do I have three?
Put a motion on the floor.
Okay. Well, I will introduce this by saying that building a capital reserve for significant repairs is a necessary part of asset management planning. So I have a couple of motions I'd like to change with the function. Oh, that one will come after the community center one. So I'd like to move that the Electoral Area C Community Works Fund allocate $30,000 towards the Quadra Island Recreation Center condition assessment.
I'll second that.
Discussion? All those in favor? Carried.
Thank you. And I would also like to move that the Electoral Area C budget, wait, I'm saying that wrong, aren't I?
The other way.
Oh, there we go. That the Electoral Area C transfer to reserve for the Quadra Island Recreation Center be increased to $25,000 for 2024.
Seconder?
Second.
Director Ray seconded. Discussion? All those in favor? That's carried.
And there's one more to do with the Hoskin Wharf Extension Project. And I would like to move that an additional $75,000 in Electoral Area C Community Works funds be allocated to the Hoskin Wharf Extension Project to allow the award of the construction contract.
Second.
Director Rice is seconded. All those in favor? And that's carried.
Thank you.
All right, Director Rice.
Yes, the one change, or two changes that I wanted to make is that I want to reduce grants and aids by 6,000, so the requisition. But I want to turn around on my feasibility studies and up it so that it has a total of 100,000.
Do you need a motion for that, staff?
Yeah, can we? So, just
Maybe you could get that down in writing. Is that possible?
that the area D grants and aid be reduced to 6,000.
No,
You got
by
it?
6.
By 6,000.
And I would like the feasibility studies increased. Okay.
Have a seconder? Director Mooney seconded it. All those in favor? That's carried. On the second motion?
And the second motion is that I want to increase my feasibility studies from, I think it's 74, I want to increase it to 100.
Got a seconder?
I'll second that.
All in favor? That's carried. We need to pause for a moment to get those recorded. We got them?
We have.
Okay. All right, so we're at item B on the budget, recommendation for approval. Someone move that, please.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? And that's carried. Okay, we've only got,
Well, I
assume-
wasn't in favor.
oh, Director Ray's opposed.
Right, and we assume the motion was as amended?
As amended,
With
yes.
the amendments proposed?
That the committee recommend the electoral area service budgets contained in the draft 2024-28 financial plan as amended be forwarded to the board for approval.
And just to be clear, that included the amendment that I made with director staff. Thanks.
We good? All right. So we've only got 10 minutes left here, and you have a piece of new business. Let's do it.
Thank you, Chair. My new business item is titled Land Use Planning Process, and it's really a question for staff regarding the changes which have been recently enacted by the province on land use planning process. And it's a theoretical question regarding Electoral Area Services Committee members receiving correspondence as we vote on first and second reading. I'm curious what the process for evaluating and getting staff responses to concerns or queries posed by community members, what that process looks like prior to director's consideration of third reading.
Are you looking at today's, is this for projecting forward to today in that that we gave notification? Is it relating to the reports that are on the board today or just higher level in
I
general?
think both.
Okay. I don't know if we have an answer for you. If you can put a resolution for a staff report, we can do that. I don't know if Aniko has an answer for that. I don't. and maybe she has to research it, maybe she knows, I don't know.
I just feel like it's something that needs to be addressed, that we, as the electoral area directors, need to understand and what that process is going to look like, so that when we're being asked by residents in emails, then we understand what that process is.
Yeah, I think Director Mooney's got a good point there, that if we receive correspondence that we believe raises concerns, there needs to be a process to address that with staff.
I think it's a great question. I just don't know the answer. If Aniko knows it, great. If not, maybe a resolution for a staff
Yeah.
report so we can research it. But no, the questions, I don't know the answer. It's a good one.
If I may advise, it will be our standard process to include any correspondence received as a result of those notifications onto a board agenda. And then the board can decide whether through policy or whatever, how it's going to deal with that. But we don't have those answers at this point.
Now, if I could just ask a question, would it be appropriate under those circumstances to refer it back to electoral areas and discuss it there again, or is that going to delay the process?
Well, it'll delay the process, which I think is what the province, the spirit of it is, to stop delaying the process. However, I don't think it's prohibited. Like, there's nothing that they can do to stop you from
Right.
deferring or referring something. But I'm thinking just best in the short, I don't know, unless Aniko has, I would prefer a resolution for a staff report.
Right,
too.
we'll give you one, but just let me say, could we refer it after second reading, like give it second reading and then refer it? Is that appropriate or not? Or
Well,
how would that
will
work?
you say can or appropriate? I don't think there's anything prohibiting you from, but Tom? Yeah.
Well, I think the board can do anything it wishes between first and third reading of a bylaw, including getting more information from staff, whether to go back to the public and get more information. I mean, the province's new legislation does constrain some of the choices, but not all of them. So the board still has ultimate decision-making on what it wishes to do with these bylaws.
So I didn't read that very well. So what I was really getting to is, would it be better to pass first reading and then defer it before we pass second, or would it be better to do first and second and then watch to defer?
Refer.
Yeah.
Sounds like a staff report to me. But,
Okay.
because I don't know the answers, but
Yeah.
we understand.
Would
that-
you like to make a motion, Director Mooney, for staff report?
Sure. Oh, looks like Annika wants to say something first.
Yeah, if I could just provide some clarity here. The public hearing process and the correspondence received is not to answer questions of the public. So that opportunity is directly through staff. Where constituents have questions, they are to ask those of staff, and staff provides that clarity. The public hearing process and the correspondence that is received by the board is for the board to receive input of the community. It's not a question and answer type period, similarly to the public hearing. When we have a public hearing, the public hearing is not an opportunity for the public to ask questions. It's opportunity for the public to provide their input or support or non-support of an application. The question and answer period is prior to a public hearing or a prohibited public hearing process. So certainly if the electoral area directors have questions of staff or would like clarity, that opportunity is made available to you during the presentation of that application at the board level. I'm aware of what that correspondence entails, and I think clarity could be provided to the board if that opportunity arises. Again, we have to remember what a rezoning process is and what subsequent subdivision and development permit processes are. So just for clarity's sake, environmental considerations are dealt with typically after a rezoning occurs.
Thank you.
Well, I would like to make a motion that staff prepare a report on the process for directors to, I guess, evaluate and receive staff input on concerns or queries posed by community members prior to consideration of third reading.
And
Does that make
if I may clarify, is that rezoning bylaws or a broader motion?
Oh, thank you. No, I think it's specifically around land use planning, because these are the changes that the province has brought in, which are really throwing a lot of questions up in the air about how we proceed obviously in the interest of the expeditious that of the province wants, but also making sure that we're answering and considering the concerns that are being raised.
So has staff captured that?
We have a seconder?
Okay.
Do you want me to make an amendment before we second that, or I'll second that then?
All those in favor? None opposed, that's carried. All right, we're ready for termination.
Move terminate?
Seconder? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, everybody.